right, International Players Anthem Nation, welcome to the best soccer planet in all of the greater Central Texas area. With me, as always, he's drawing fouls in the box. It's Mr. Stephen Whiting.
Yeah, I've been binge eating hummus.
That's how we
Hummus
do
that I
it.
converted. Yeah, it's crazy. Baby carrots and hummus. Shit was real for the USA-Mexico game in Phoenix, which, incidentally, a stadium, the only time I visited, I had a credentialing snafu for the 2007 Fiesta Bowl and was pulled off the field by media relations for the second half, in which West Virginia beat my beloved Oklahoma Sooners quite handily.
Boy, Stephen, that's a tough pill to swallow. I have no
Yeah,
idea
much
why.
like the second half of this game, Ramon. Much like the second half of this game.
And folks, we're getting ahead of ourselves. This is a special Thursday edition, although we like the time slot because generally Thursday you got more people engaged than Friday when everyone's ready to go home for the weekend, tuning out. Long story short, folks, Thursday night. Wait, sorry,
Wednesday night.
Wednesday night.
We're being proactive, Ramon.
Yeah. I'm bearing the lead here. USA 2, Mexico 2. A tale of two halves is your cliche AP-style headline. Stephen, what the hell just happened?
Well, I think that I'm trying to process. It's cliche for a reason because there were two very different halves. I tweeted from our IPA handle mid second half, right after Rafa Marquez got one back for Mexico, that what's great about these friendlies is you've got everybody overreacting to every little thing that happens. Mexico kind of came out with a funny lineup and strengthened as the game went on. The U.S. had the opposite approach, I would say, as far as their substitutions.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I think that's a good point. I mean, it was, to be absolutely clear, this was an exhibition game. This was a chance to sort of shore up the bench. There's maybe 4 or 5 guys total that had something to gain or something to lose from tonight.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's the reality that this is USA Mexico. This is 60,000 plus in Glendale, Arizona. This is a very contentious, intense rivalry, and we can kind of get into that later. And more importantly, this could have been Landon Donovan's, more than likely his last time facing Mexico, a team that he's absolutely terrorized during his reign with the United States men's national team. So a lot of emotions at play. Moreover, first time we saw the big three on the field under Jurgen Klinsmann in quite a while. This is only the 5th time that's happened where you have Michael Bradley and Clint Dempsey and Landon Donovan playing. And then, of course, you got some surprise super subs that we'll get into later. Weird formation for both teams. Just weird game. But let's go to the highlights. Michael Bradley scores. USA scores. Stephen, who had that second goal? I don't even remember.
Chris Wondolowski.
Chris Wondolowski scores 2-0.
Our the guy has scored, I think, something like 8 goals in his last 10 games. He's come out of nowhere, both domestically in MLS and internationally with the United States over the last 2 years. And I'll let you get back to the highlights in a second. I just want to set this up. This is the guy that coming into the game, a lot of people had circled. Can he play his way into Brazil? And he gets a goal in the 28th minute to give the United States a 2-0 lead. Continue, Ramon.
Absolutely. So coming out of the second half, the narrative at halftime, boy, the MLS All-Stars really taken to the Liga MX All-Stars. Is Michael Bradley the best player in CONCACAF? It's sure looking like it. And boy, U.S. with that possession, with that tiki-taka style all of a sudden, looking like Spain out there, just kind of blowing the doors off of El Tri. Of course, second half, some adjustments are made. Miguel Herrera more than likely takes a few shots in the dressing room. And I'm talking tequila, not personal insults. Mexico comes
I think
back
there
out.
was probably a little bit of both, Ramon. Let's be honest and forthright here. I'll bet that he had a tequila water pistol in there, and a couple people got shot in the eyes, and then he just downed the rest of the bottle.
No, it was an intense one. Mexico comes out. Rafa Marquez, as he so often has done as captain of this team, scores off of a set piece with a really coming off a really nice pick, almost like basketball, just clearing out the lane, punching it in from point blank range in completely methodical fashion. Later, Alan Pulido One of the strikers sort of jostling to make this team, makes that final forward position a real head scratcher. Scores his fourth goal in 3 appearances for the Mexican national team. You got a 2-2 game. You had a goal by Eddie Johnson called back from an offsides call. You had a Julian Green PK that probably should have been called, but it was well outside the box. Um, a really intense, fast, exciting game. This is a game that I think we remember watching, and you look at what you would watch back in the day, Stephen, and I'm talking 10, 15 years ago, and you see, a very sort of counterattacking defensive center team, and then you have a very frenetic team like Mexico. And here, both teams just came out very fluid, very attacking, with their eyes on the ball, in terms of just trying to get possession and trying to break down the defense that way. And really exciting, thrilling game. Everybody got their money's worth there at the University of Phoenix Stadium. Stephen,
Yeah, they really did, especially the last 15 minutes was just it was fun to watch from a fan's perspective, certainly.
absolutely no, but so that's what happened, which you probably already know if you're listening to this Thursday morning. Now, here's what actually matters about that game. And Steve, we'll go. I'll start with Mexico. You can kind of get into the U.S. Like this game. The bottom line is that this game is about who's going to get a ticket to the to Brazil. Who's going to the dance on each respective squad. With Mexico, for me, it came down to really two positions at play, and two deep positions, but two important positions. On one hand, and we've talked about this before, it's keeper. You had Moises Munoz, who's kind of Miguel Herrera's boy. The two of them worked together quite a bit at America. And you have the Talavera, you basically longtime backup keeper for the Mexican national team. Each got to play a half. Talavera looks slightly better, but he was the guy making mistakes, although, of course, he kept a clean sheet for his half. Didn't have to do a whole heck of a lot. Munoz looked like a guy with experience, with commanded respect of his back line. Played well, had one or two outstanding saves early on. I'd be very surprised if Moises Munoz is not the guy that goes to Brazil for that third keeper position. More importantly, more tellingly, more compellingly, the forward position, Raul Jimenez versus Alan Pulido, two guys that have battled forever for just trying to get time with the Mexican national team. I think it's been Jimenez's job to lose because of his sort of miraculous bicycle kick that lifted Mexico against Panama back in October. I do think, though, Alan Pulido, again, 3 goals in 4 games, playing out of his mind right now. You got to eventually just take the best player who's playing the most in form, and right now that is unquestionably Pulido. So right now,
So you're going to take Polito over Jimenez?
I think right now you have to, because again you got 5 spots there. You got Gio dos Santos, Chicharito Hernandez, Oribe Peralta. All those guys are more or less locked in right now. Pulido's playing better soccer. That's all that I care about, and that's all that you can care about. And so right now, and it's interesting, little tidbit here. Pulido started over Jimenez tonight, somewhat surprisingly, so much so that during the press conference, Miguel Herrera's daughter, who is a reporter in Mexico, asked her father, "Why are you starting Pulido over Jimenez? What are you doing?" So, ultimately,
And then he gets a goal. So
and then Pulido goes and gets a goal in the second half with Jimenez in the game. I think right now that you got to play the hotter hand, because that's the World Cup. It's like March Madness in that the hot hand wins. And right now you just ride the pony that's clicking, which is a big reason why I'm taking both UConn and Kentucky this weekend in the national semis to play in the national title game.
don't talk to me about Connecticut basketball right now.
Neither
Even
don't
even bring it up.
There. Not, and one last footnote there for the Mexican national team. Marco Fabian, who has played with Chivas Guadalajara, currently playing with Cruz Azul, a very exciting young prospect in the national team, instrumental in the gold medal in the London 2012 Olympics. He looking really comfortable in midfield, creating some nice opportunities, especially in the second half. I'm thinking he's going to make this team. Curious to see what his ceiling turns out to be this time around. So that's really what there is to report with respect to Mexico. Steven, USA, what happened? Who's making the team? Who's on the bubble? What did you like?
Well, man, I want to go back to Mexico real quick. I don't know what you do between. I think it's a 3-horse race between Fabian, Pulido, and Jimenez for that last spot. You know what I mean? I think 2 of those 3 will go, but I just have a hard time taking Polito if it's me because 3 of those 4 goals came against South Korea's JV team.
Yeah,
And it was a poacher's goal tonight off the post. I don't know. I just think Jimenez gives you a little more size and a little more versatility out of the air. I don't know. That Polito to me, if we're gonna segue here, reminds me a lot of kind of the situation that Wondolowski's in for the United States. A guy that just always seems to be in the right place at the right time. Wando, of course, has done it over a little bit, larger share of time here in the last 6, 7, 8 months than Polito has. Polito literally just burst onto the scene in January, a game we witnessed in person in San Antonio. So as far as Wondolowski, man, and I tweeted before the game, if there's somebody who's really, really, got something to play for, it's Wondolowski. But much like Polito, the spot he's going after is Eddie Johnson's to lose. And so there you saw Wondolowski score the second goal to put us up, but that goal was also created as much by Dempsey and Bradley's glancing header there. Or maybe it was Zusi that played it into to Bradley. I can't even remember. Or it could have been Tony Beltran. Either way, I think that disallowed goal from Eddie Johnson is exactly what's going to keep Wondolowski off the plane to Brazil. Because I think Julian Green automatically gets a spot. That was part of his courtship, part of his recruitment, and we'll touch on more on that here in a second. But I think the biggest questions tonight were both defensively and what's can Chris Wondolowski play himself into Brazil? And it's one of those things, he's going to be the media story if he makes it. The U.S. media story. Besides him and Beckerman. Beckerman would be making his World Cup debut at the age of 32. And I think that you can't fault him. I think he did everything in his power. He scored against Mexico. He's been on a hot streak. But when it comes down to it, are you going to take him over Aaron Johansson? Probably not. Josie Altidore? Probably not. Eddie Johnson? Probably not. Eddie Johnson's got a little more aerial prowess. He's got a little more speed. He's got a lot more of the physical attributes. But like you said with the Polito-Jimenez debate, boy, it's tough to argue with a guy that scores goals. Because at the end of the day, the team with the most goals wins. So I think right now it's just unfortunate. I think that Wando's not going to go. Defensively, I was excited we got to see DeAndre Yedlin come in. I don't know that he's going to make Brazil this year. I do think he's going to be a monster star in the future for the U.S. national team. Currently plays for the Seattle Sounders. Is extremely athletic on the right side there, and can, I believe, play left back as well. So I don't know that we found out too much from this game defensively, except that Omar Gonzalez is shaky at best on those set pieces. A lot of people pushing for Jeff Cameron to play in the middle with Matt Beasler, the Sporting Kansas City star. Beasler had a solid game. Gonzalez was the one who got picked on that Rafa Marquez goal. I don't know. I think Gonzalez may have played his way out of the starting lineup with the performance tonight. Ramon, we made a big case about this being somewhat of a lesser strength Mexico team, but you look at the guys they had on the field, and especially in the second half, and that was a pretty good squad in the second half. I thought that when you look at 75 minutes on, that was a pretty good. I mean, it wasn't a true A-team game from both teams, but that was the bulk of what you're going to see in Brazil, I think, from both teams. For the United States, I think you've got to be really nervous at the set pieces, the glaring weakness, and Mexico showed this as well. We've both said it numerous times since we started doing this in the early fall. Both teams just have this huge Achilles heel when it comes to set pieces, and it's all confidence. That's what it is to me. It's a mental thing, and I think that's going to be the biggest story going forward for both teams. You have to be concerned if you're Mexico with the way that Michael Bradley dominated the game, especially against a guy like Luka Modric in Croatia.
Yep.
I think that's got to be terrifying if you're Miguel Herrera. But at the end of the day, you look at what Herrera did, down 2-0. Yes, you could argue it was a de facto home game for Mexico, but at the same time, it's on U.S. soil. It's a huge game, and his players fought, and they came back and got 2 tough goals and really could have won that game. it was an even game at the end, and you would, I think everybody who was watching the game would have loved to have seen another 20, 30 minutes to really see, what could have happened.
Yeah, yeah. I
But
mean, this is the kind of game where I mean, really, we're at this point. I think you're thinking, yes, you're right. We're talking about who's gonna. I mean, in terms of what's at stake, it's a question of these guys, these few guys, have a chance to change the pecking order at the bottom of the roster. But you're right. On
mhm,
the field, a lot of what's going to be in Brazil we saw. Now, what was missing tonight were the European players, but those are mostly complementary guys in both cases. And so, absolutely, just
I'll tell you what, Ramon, where
yeah,
was the Jungle Cat tonight, man?
we were
Boy, he
we were
let me
waiting for
down.
him. We were waiting for him to break out. But the midfield game was completely one sided. And again, I talked to a buddy of mine that is it works very closely with the Mexican national team, travels with the team, and he's been routinely
Hmm.
telling me Mexico's biggest Achilles heel, other than the back line that isn't necessarily bad, it's just not as talented as the competition that it's potentially facing down in Brazil, is midfield. And we've been waiting for that attacking mid position to really flesh out an attack. Marco Fabian
Hmm.
looked good, but yeah, we were certainly waiting for Pena to do something. But no, Michael Bradley absolutely housed and ran that, and almost just like a no huddle offense in American football, just nonstop, merciless. Everything was firing on every last cylinder. But yeah, I think though overall, Stephen, I want to get your take. I'm going to give Mexico a B, and I think this kind of performance,
Yeah.
this kind of form, this kind of sort of grit that it showed is, I think for both teams, the objective in Brazil is very clear. It's, can you get 4 points out of this group? And I think right now Mexico
Yes,
is in
I
a
completely agree with that.
pretty prime position to come away because it has an easier schedule with 4 points. And unfortunately, with the United States, they look better than Mexico overall. Just a brutal draw, and I think defensively they're gonna have a really hard time. And again, we can't say this enough. At In front of the United States men's national team is the most talented team in the world, the team with the best striker in the world currently, because Messi's been kind of off and on and hurt, and the team that's knocked the United States out of the last two World Cups. And you have to beat one of those teams, tie one of those, and sort of, get through the third game. I'm not sure that they're up to the task based on what I saw tonight, but I am encouraged. And I do think now, because of the fluidity that the United States displayed, when that team is at full strength, I think it can absolutely beat Ghana.
Oh, I do too. I think that it comes down to the Portugal game for me. I think, well, I want to say that. I beating Ghana is a tough ask. Let's go ahead and lay that out on the table right now. That is by no means a gimme game. That's going to be our Kentucky Louisville game or our Kentucky Wichita State game, and it's coming early. It's coming quick. I think you said it's during happy hour. Hopefully, it won't go like my happy hour jaunt did yesterday.
Mm.
Woke up with one of the worst hangovers of my life this morning. Just sidebar there.
Well,
Um,
Steven, I don't want to put you on blast, but I have also been drinking, and so I'm not in the. I don't have my notes in front of me. I can't really sit here and detail my current starting 11 for Mexico, but I want to
mhm.
get your starting 11 for the United States.
Man, it's tough. I mean, especially on a game like today, I can't figure out what Jurgen Klinsmann wants to do with Landon Donovan. You know, I, I mean, we know Dempsey's going to start. I'm pretty sure Zusi's going to start. We know Michael Bradley's going to start. If they play that diamond formation, are they going to put Donovan out on the left? I don't know. Maybe. Um, I would think Altidor's going to start, but I don't know. I don't know if they're going to put Dempsey in the hole, if they want to move him up top and put Donovan, in front. Michael Bradley certainly played farther up tonight. I don't know that he can get away with that against a team like Ghana or uh, Portugal or Germany. You got to think Matt Beasler for sure in the center of defense. Tim Howard, of course, at goalkeeper. It's been Omar Gonzalez in the center of defense. I think that a lot of the people chirping on Twitter tonight wanted uh, Jeff Cameron there, who plays for Stoke in the English Premier League, although he plays on the outside for Stoke. Yeah, I mean, they may have a point on that. I mean, Omar Gonzalez did not have a great game, and certainly we're going to be faced with teams with much more firepower. Um, I don't know. I mean, I think that picking the 23 is going to be a lot easier at this point. I still don't know if Beasley's going to start or not. And Beasley didn't play, of course, with Puebla not releasing its players. The U.S. media was kind of all over that earlier in the week, but it goes without saying, Puebla could be relegated, and they want to ensure that they get at least a win or two here in their last 4 games. So, I think Beasley's a lock to go to Brazil anyway, so I don't blame them. But I don't, Ramon. Basically, I can't answer that question fully right now because you just don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know. I think the thing with Klinsmann is you can't tell how much of it is mind games, and you can't tell how much of it is legitimate tactical shifts.
Absolutely.
You know,
And by the same token, I mean, here's the thing about Klinsmann. I don't feel like I've gotten the US's best shot in almost 3 years of Klinsmann. I feel like he always, when he's qualifying for the World Cup or when he's participating in the Gold Cup, I feel like he thinks the competition is beneath the talent that he has, and so he just plays around and he tinkers it. In friendlies, he's playing around and he's tinkering. He's making power moves, and then he's sort of bringing guys in.
I
He's sort
think
of like seeing what he can get out of Donovan with 15, 20-minute bursts. So I
look
don't
at Tony
know.
Beltran tonight starting. That came out of nowhere.
Yeah,
And everybody was like, "Huh?" I mean, this guy's only third cap.
yeah.
And he starts it.
Go ahead, Steven.
Well, no, I was just gonna. I'm agreeing with your point, and it's just, And I got a couple text messages about it. Who's Tony Beltran? Well, that's what Jurgen Klinsmann does, and you know what? We don't know what we're doing back there in the back yet. That's the most infuriating thing I think for the United States fans, and the most terrifying prospect is who the hell is going to be playing in defense for us. So I like that Jurgen Klinsmann's gambling, and he's going to use all of the resources at his disposal to make sure that he finds the best fit for each game tactically. That being said, we're 10 weeks away, and we're starting guys nobody's heard of, or I mean, the guy plays for Real Salt Lake. He's a pretty good player, but he's not an established name.
Dude,
He's not a Steve
Jurgen
Cherundolo or
Klinsmann
any of that.
he's
So.
playing hipster soccer, right? You haven't heard of him. You haven't heard of him. You haven't heard of him.
Mhm.
Really, really just angular counterculture managerial stuff. Whereas Miguel Herrera is, he puts it on the table every time out. He's like, okay, guys, here's my starting 11. Here's my starting sheet. Okay, this is what we're gonna do. All right, and the problem there is that he's leaning on his domestic side and guys that he likes, and it's a Bill Parcells situation. Not that he's of that caliber, where genius, wonderful coach with great tactics, but he needs his guys. And next thing you know, Vinny Testaverde starting in an AFC Championship, right? It's that kind of a situation. So that's my concern. I don't know, Steven. I think the United States is got some big questions lingering, and that's bothersome to me, and that makes me uneasy. But at the same time, I think they have a higher ceiling talent-wise. We just may not get to see it this time around in this particular World Cup. Any closing thoughts on
I
this
completely agree with that. I think that 2018 is what Jurgen Klinsmann's looking at. I think that's why we're seeing Julian Green. That's why we're seeing DeAndre Yedlin. These guys are young. I don't see DeAndre Yedlin going to Brazil this year, but I see him being an absolute lock in 4 years and one of the most marketed stars we have. So, I think that's the thing that right now Jurgen Klinsmann's got, and he's looking at the big picture. It's going to be really difficult to get out of the group, and even if they do, they may be so beat up it's not going to matter who they play in the knockout stages. Mexico is almost on the opposite end. They were so horrific in qualifying, and Miguel Herrera is such a brash kind of guy that there are going to be plenty of excuses to write this team off. And I think that's exactly what he was going for tonight. That's what I love about Mexico's performance tonight. Everybody watching that game had written Mexico off at halftime. Everybody. You saw it. Just go back and scan your Twitter timeline. All you're going to hear about is how U.S. completely dominated, Mexico looks horrible, and then Miguel Herrera drops a typical Miguel Herrera, makes a couple subs, and next thing you know, it's 2-2. So, and that's been Herrera's calling card, playing with confidence, making El Tri believe we are the best, team in CONCACAF, and they've got a little bit better, group draw, like you said earlier. I think that Mexico is going to be one of the most intriguing teams going into this World Cup because kind of like the United States with their split between the Liga MX players and the European players, as the U.S. has the MLS players and the European players. We're just not sure how all the talent's going to fold together. Even more so with Mexico because Herrera came in and banned all the European players for that New Zealand playoff.
Yeah.
So it's certainly intriguing stuff as we go forward, and I think the more you talk about it and the more you think about it, boy, June is pretty mouth-watering.
I can't wait. It's going to be an absolute blast. And before we get too ahead of ourselves, Mexico 2, United States 2, a really kind of a referendum game between the MLS and Liga MX in terms of talent, in terms of competitive nature. Just really wild to see Donovan Dempsey and Bradley together on the same field, while at the same time seeing such a young squad on the bench. You know, there were shots of the bench, and it looked like the McDonald's All-American game. So really just like exciting, good stuff. That felt like a regional final. I would have loved to have seen an overtime and then an inevitable series of PKs there. That'll have to wait until June. Stephen,
Yep.
With that, I think it's time for the World Cup Minute. All right, okay, actually, Stephen, I'm going to keep it real, bro. I did not prepare for this. We don't really have any World Cup Minute news. However, we're going to post some good stuff on this blog post, so by the time you're listening, you will have already consumed the World Cup Minute information, and that is going to be our World Cup Minute.
I think that's going to go down as one of the more epic saves in International Players Anthem podcast history, Ramon. I mean, you were real with the people, and you just left it all out there.
We are for the people, we are of the people, and we keep it realer than most. Now,
not all, but most.
We're not the North American Players Anthem, Stephen Whiting. We are the International Players Anthem. So it's time to talk international soccer, and it's time to talk the UEFA Champions League. We are down to the Elite Eight. We more or less know who's advancing, but we had some very, very thrilling games. And I just want to get your thoughts on these 2 days of basically game one, these first legs of the playoff. What did you like? What do you think is happening? Any surprises?
Well, I think that on the whole, I want to say it was surprising that Manchester United drew Bayern Munich 1-1. I did tweet out before the game. I just had that feeling that, Manchester United literally has nothing to play for except for the Champions League. They were at home, backs against the wall, expectations low, and lo and behold, they come out and get a 1-0 lead on Bayern Munich and really could have beaten Bayern Munich. That being said, I think this is going to go a lot like the matchup they had with Roma back in, I believe it was 2009 or 2010, where they won 1-0 at home and then got beat 5-1, 5-0 in the return leg in Rome. I think, I said on the last podcast that Bayern Munich is going to destroy them over two legs, and I just can't see Manchester United making a game of it in Munich.
Yeah.
So that was a little bit of a surprise, but I don't know. I just got this feeling before that game that, it's, I'll tell you what it was. It was the Gus Johnson effect, Ramon.
Oof.
These two teams like to fight, and they're not.
Dude, this is awesome.
It's the Gus effect.
Yeah, Stephen, absolutely. Gus Johnson game, but it definitely felt like one shining moment as opposed to two sustained leg appearances and performances from Manchester United. And I think you and I both expect them to get properly crushed by Bayern Munich, although they gave themselves a chance to come out of that alive. So all kudos to Man U. Elsewhere, two one-sided games on Wednesday. Real Madrid and Paris Saint-Germain just sort of taking it to their respective foes, Borussia Dortmund and Chelsea. It's looking like they're on an inevitable collision course. I don't think there's any point in dissecting those games. Suffice it to say, look at the highlights and tell me those aren't two of the three best teams in the world. But what's going to be most interesting next week, Atletico Madrid, Barcelona, 1-1, and a huge away goal, the best goal of the round, of the week, from Diego from Atletico Madrid. Just this deep strike from, 25, 30 yards
near
out. Near post, just gorgeous. All of a sudden, Atletico Madrid, the darling of this tournament. Barcelona having kind of a miserable week. They draw at home, which is almost like losing. They get some hefty FIFA sanctions and can't. And Stephen, you're gonna have to help me out here. Basically, they can't bring in th anyone from the transfer window for a
They
year.
to put it succinctly, they have a 1 year transfer ban. So nobody can come in this summer, and nobody can come in over the winter break next year. So who knows what that's going to be? I think if we're gonna let's backtrack here just a second. The story of this Champions League week has been injuries and suspensions. So Zlatan Ibrahimovic for Paris Saint-Germain leaves with a hamstring issue. Diego Costa for Atletico Madrid, the really the engine that makes them hum, had an injury concern coming in. I was very surprised he even played. Re-aggravated that thigh, groin concern, whatever it is, during that game. Gerard Piqué, star defender for Barcelona on the other side of that field, fractured his hip. He's out 4 weeks on a defense that's incredibly thin as it is. Then you've got Cristiano Ronaldo, left today's game with a hamstring issue. And I'm leaving somebody at, I can't remember who it is for Bayern Munich. I think it's Toni Kroos. Their star midfielder misses the next game due to accumulated yellow card. Or Bastian Schweinsteiger, that's who it is. Got the red card.
He got red card. Yeah.
He got
the
red card
against Man U toward the end of the game when that 1-1 tie was almost imminent.
And it was an awful dicey call. I gotta say.
Well, Stephen, let me ask you, man. Let me ask you. Again, we're down to one competitive game in the Elite Eight, which is one of the downside of the leg playoff system is that by game 2, oftentimes the series is just about over. Atletico and Barcelona. Barcelona, of course, sort of the team of the last half decade. At one point, Javi was completely brilliant, completing 82 of 84 passes, at one point in the game. So just really orchestrating great chances. A joy to watch Barcelona, but Atletico again has this kind of magic. Who are you rooting for?
I think I like Atletico. I mean, the great thing about the Atletico Barcelona showdown is it's pretty much down to these two for the Spanish league title going forward. And I believe they play on the final day. And that may decide that. I need to double check that. But they have drawn in every single match they've played this season. 0-0, 1-1, 1-1, 1-1. So, to be continued. We'll see. I think that Atletico probably... It's just hard to say because if Diego Costa does not play next week, or 2 weeks from now, I'm not sure when the next legs are.
7 days from now. For 6 days from the time that you're listening to it. So next week.
Okay.
Next Wednesday.
So next week. It's just so tough because, I mean, they've got David Villa and they've got these other offensive weapons, so they're certainly not, it's not like a blunt knife edge, but you just expect, I don't know, that the edge is that Barcelona's defense is in shambles. They've got all this attacking talent with Pedro and Neymar and Leo Messi and all those guys, Xavi, Iniesta. They can score goals. Atletico is a formidable team in the back. But without Diego Costa, it's just like, well, we don't know if we have that equalizer anymore. I'm going to pick Atletico Madrid over there. But I'm going to tell you right now, don't sleep on Chelsea and London. All they need is a 2-0 win. They got that away goal, that one goal, that penalty goal may be huge. I still like PSG to get through, but if Ibrahimovic can't play, Cavani certainly didn't look good today. If it wasn't for Ezekiel Lavezzi, PSG was kind of an average team. I mean, they got on the board first, and then Chelsea should have been up 2-1, and then PSG completely dominated, I felt, in the last 30 minutes of the second half. But
Absolutely. Paris Saint-Germain really fed off of its crowd today in Paris, and you're right. Going to Stamford Bridge is gonna change a lot, and Chelsea still very much within striking distance. But that third goal for Paris Saint-Germain really felt like a backbreaker, and more importantly, Edinson Cavani his head just does not seem to be with it. He was complaining in the press recently that playing in sort of a crowded deck, so to speak, alongside so much talent, he's having to do a lot more defending than he usually does. He doesn't really get to relish his role as just a sort of a pure attacker, and he's the kind of guy that in the offseason, don't be surprised if he take some cash elsewhere. I think we're all kind of expecting that to happen. So definitely kind of playing this mercenary role. And you're right, Ibrahimovic hurt changes everything. I still like Paris Saint-Germain. And Stephen, I think it's time to talk. We've said all that needs to be said about this Elite Eight. Let's set the table for this weekend. We got the Copa del Rey. We got some MLS action, some Liga MX action, some Premier League action. What are you watching?
For me, it comes down to two, and I hope I don't steal any of your games here. Everton-Arsenal. Big game for that final Champions League spot. Arsenal's probably safely going to come in fourth in that spot. That is bright and early. I think it's 8 a.m. or something like that, Sunday morning, excuse me. And then, of course, a rematch of our MLS Cup final Saturday between our beloved Sporting Kansas City and Real Salt Lake. Should be a fantastic game. I don't often say that about MLS games, but this should be one worth your time.
Right on. On that note, Mashable, a very, very popular website that generally writes about technology and social media, had a piece this week that was like, hey, America, pay attention to the MLS because the World Cup is coming, which I found to be a sort of fundamentally flawed argument. Because if you want to get into soccer for the World Cup, you're watching 4 or 5 other leagues before you watch the MLS, and I think that's been a big problem. I heard the guys on the Men in Blazers podcast bring up the same issue, and that's that there's not enough bandwidth for American sports fans. It's one thing to balance soccer into your baseball, which opening day just kicked off, and your March Madness. It's another thing to balance 4 or 5 different leagues, and within those leagues, it's an entirely other thing to prioritize the Major League Soccer of the United States of America, especially when you don't inherently have a team or a rooting interest or any sort of knowledge of the players. I still can't get completely on board, if I'm being entirely honest, with MLS in the sense that I just have not had time for it, and I found the Premier League to be boundlessly easier because it's early on. It doesn't conflict with my other sports calendar or my duties as a husband calendar. I haven't watched a single MLS match this season, and I'm legitimately embarrassed about it. But you're telling me to watch Real Salt Lake in my beloved Sporting Kansas City. I'm gonna be there with my blue and dark blue on, and just ripped in the front row. Singing lead for a Leonard Skinner cover band, right? Like, I just can't wait. So, Sporting Kansas City, Real Salt Lake, I'm in. Let's do this thing. And with that, it's time for our red cards of the week.
It's nasty as a rat bait from the back. It's wicked. It's malicious. It's verging on criminal. I mean, it's one of those that a red card is really not enough.
All right, Stephen, our red cards. We're gonna come back around. Time as a flat circle. A United States Mexico centric red card edition. I'm gonna let you go first.
My red card of the week goes to Miguel Herrera for showing up an hour and a half late for the USA-Mexico game, complaining incessantly about his police escort and traffic detail, and just, generally being Miguel Herrera. At the same time, I would totally buy him a beer because I thought just everything he did was awesome today.
Yeah, Steven, I'm right there with you. My red card is actually going to go to my paisano Rafa Marquez, who is captain of the Mexican national team and one of the stalwarts. He said in the press that he believed that the MLS lacked professionalism, and then this week he was given a chance to readdress those comments. Of course, Rafa Marquez played for many years with Barcelona, and then kind of was out of shape playing with the New York Red Bulls, and now he's back and playing for León in Mexico. But he said that he felt that the MLS lacked professionalism. He was asked this week if he still meant that, if he still bought that, kind of a nice, hey, you get a chance to make nice as the captain of the team. And he said, yeah, that's still my belief. It is my belief, again, that the MLS lacks professionalism. Don't like those kind of words. I don't like those kind of generalizations. Rafa Marquez, you're going to get red carded for that statement. All right, Stephen, again, that's the International Players Anthem podcast. We are the best podcasters on the planet, the greatest podcasters of all time. USA 2, Mexico 2. I can't wait for the summer. Stephen, you have yourself a heck of a week.
You too, sir. You too.
Oh, where to begin? We are North Americans, and for those of you who still think we're from England, we're not. No. We've been on planes and on trains till we think we might die. Far from North America, where the buildings are old, and you might have lots of